It's about this time of the year when people talk about certain issues. They talk about the birth of Messiah. What exactly is a Messiah supposed to be like? The first thing is that a Messiah has to be a king. Why a king? The answer is because a king has only one thing higher than himself, and that's God. There could be many kings, but no king feels secondary to the other king unless the other one is a king above him, has defeated him. Then he's only a servant of that king. He's called a king, but he's not really a king. A king is independent, who has only one fear, that he has to face God. He's afraid of God, connected to God, and wants people not to serve him. That's not a Messiah. To serve him because he brings you to God. The purpose of Messiah is not to bring people close to the Messiah. It's to bring people close to God. And how do you do that? You do that by getting people to perform the commandments of God, the mitzvot. And when the mitzvot are there, you can establish the land of Israel, that the people of Israel can be in their land in peace and in harmony, with no fear of their enemies. So the Messiah has to be willing to fight enemies in order to ensure peace and tranquility in the Holy Land, so that Israel can worship God properly. And when Israel worships God properly, then God's presence will descend upon the Holy Temple. He will build a Holy Temple, not just an edifice, not just $100, $200 billion complex. I just saw Barclays Arena in Brooklyn. It's magnificent, but it's not a holy temple. God isn't in that building. I mean, God's presence is everywhere. But God is not going to be revealed in Barclays Arena, nor in Madison Square Garden, nor in the Forum in Los Angeles. You know where God will be revealed? On Mount Moriah in the Holy Temple. But only if, two things, people are devoted to God through God's commandments, and as a result of that there is peace and harmony, and they can fulfill it to the utmost. And then when they build a temple and they have love of Israel, and they're in harmony, and they're doing what they need to do, and they're studying God's wisdom, then God's presence will be in the Holy Temple. So the function of the Messiah is to connect people with God, because he is a king, and his only issue is that God is above him. And the medium through which he does that is through the commandments. He's perfect in the commandments. He gets everybody to do those commandments. And the purpose of the commandments is to do them in the Holy Land and establish the Holy Land so that God's presence could be manifest in that Holy Land and spread to the whole world. Now think about this. What wars did Jesus fight? What sense of self-confidence, of leadership did he exhibit? Did he exhibit bravery when he denied that he was the king of the Jews? Or when he asked God, according to the Gospels, why have you slaughtered me? Which King David says, why hast thou forsaken me? Is that an expression of bravery? King David says it rhetorically. Why have you forsaken me temporarily? I know that you're going to save me. But why do I have to go through this? Well, I'm going to face up to it anyway. But King David did not complain when things were not happening his way. And Jesus, when things don't happen his way, complains to God. I want to contrast this with Rabbi Akiva, whose flesh was being torn by iron combs and had no less pain than the whole passion of the crucifixion. And what did our Rabbi Akiva say? You should love the Lord with all your heart and with all your soul, even if he takes away your life. And as they were pulling away his flesh from his bones, he said the Shema and gave his soul back to his Maker. He didn't complain because he was a true leader of Israel. He couldn't be a king because he was from converts. But that is the true leader of Israel. And that spark of Rabbi Akiva will resonate through the Messiah. Messiah cannot be a person who chickens out and complains. And Messiah cannot be someone who demands worship of himself outside of God. There is no man who is a Lord. Man can be a channel of God. The Messiah is God's channel. We receive God's inspiration, God's wisdom, God's revelation through the Messiah. But the Messiah is not God, one with God. God speaks through the Messiah. But he is not the ultimate. He's not the one that we pray to. He's not the one that we owe allegiance to. Our allegiance to the Messiah is because God is revealed through the Messiah, because there is God that we can sense there. And you say, well, we pray on our own? We can pray on our own, but we can't have revelation to that level on our own. We're not worthy. The Messiah reveals that to all of us, despite our faults. But the Messiah has to be devoted to God, not to himself. Strengthen the commandments, for they are the connecting factor. They are the nerves, and they are the veins and arteries to which the impulses, in which the life force, the blood of God's life energies goes through the mitzvahs, the commandments. And the Christians negated the commandments. And the third thing is to establish Israel. What did the Christians cause? They caused greater persecution, greater scattering of the Jewish people, the diminishing numbers of Jews because of those persecutions. Because they hated the Jewish religion. That was the origin, and denied their grandeur, the self-deluded grandeur. Why is Jesus not the Messiah? He got people to worship himself, not God. He's not a king, but an individual with an ego. And he got them not to do the commandments. And the Messiah has to strengthen the commandments. And the Messiah has to gather Israel and build a temple. He caused further destruction, further diaspora, further murders. So, no, that's not the Messiah. The Messiah will be a man who is fearless, who accepts God's will and brings all of Israel to the Holy Land and builds a holy temple. And from that temple, God's presence will be manifest to the whole world.